gonna die!
When I jumped in the water, saw his leg, could see his femur. It was pouring blood out so fast, like it looked like a faucet was turned on underwater with blood coming out of it.
Everything went black. I started to get shaken horizontally. I was getting eaten alive.
The only thing that I was thinking was, Craig, this is a dream. You have to wake up right now.
A 5-foot radius of blood in seconds. A femur exposed beneath a 15-inch gash. And in the chaos, friends who refused to let go. Another man swallowed headfirst by a great white. Blinded, crushed, still breathing inside its mouth. These aren't scenes from a horror movie. They're real stories of real survivors. And moments that left even the seasoned divers asking,
Is this the end? Is this what it's like to die?
In this episode, we dive into 5 of the deadliest shark encounters in history. Like a spearfisher who needed 800 stitches to survive, to a freediver who swam for her life with her leg torn open. Sharks have ruled Earth's oceans for over 400 million years. And though humans like to think we're the apex predator, in their world, we're just meat that doesn't swim very well. Most sharks don't go after humans, but when they do, it's brutal. And survival? Sometimes it comes down to pure instinct. Or a brother who's willing to punch a shark to save your life. What made one teenager's beach day turn into a life or death rescue mission? Why did one spearfisher's mistake become an ad for PETA? And how did a diving vest save this man's life?
I looked down and saw it was a shark.
Within a split second, there was a 5-foot radius of blood around him.
It started like any other spearfishing trip. In the summer of 2011, CJ Wickersham was diving with friends off the coast of Anna Maria Island, Florida. They were locals, used to seeing sharks in these waters.
Usually when we'll go out and spearfish on wrecks in different areas, you'll see sharks all the time. They usually come in and they kind of check you out and then kind of roll on their way.
But this time, the shark didn't roll away. It struck. CJ had just speared a hogfish and swam it back to the boat. He went down again, tried for a mango snapper, and missed.
And the next thing I felt a bump, tug on my leg. Then I looked down and saw it was a shark.
A bull shark had locked its jaws around his leg. It tore open a 15-inch gash, exposing his thigh bone and severed his femoral artery. Blood gushed into the water, turning it red within seconds. Desperation kicked in as CJ did whatever he could to force his attacker to let go.
I took both of my fists closed and hit it as hard as I could on the nose. I just looked down, I could see kind of like a flap on my bathing suit ripped open.
Now, he was bleeding out, and fast. The femoral artery is the largest blood vessel in the leg. When it's severed, most people bleed to death before help arrives. The ocean around them was now a pool of blood. And that raised another fear: more sharks. On the boat, his friends worked fast. Using towels and an anchor rope, they tied a makeshift tourniquet around his upper thigh. One held pressure on the wound. Thanks to the quick thinking and the constant attention of his friends, keeping him calm, talking to him, never letting him drift, he stayed awake the whole ride back to shore. The boat raced toward land, where paramedics airlifted CJ to the hospital. By that point, he estimates he had already lost more than half his blood. The wound required between 700 to 800 sutures to close, but against the odds, he survived. In October of that year, CJ's rescuers were honored in a special ceremony in Holmes Beach, Florida. It was a rare happy ending in a type of story that often doesn't have one. But not everyone saw it that way. Just days after the attack, PETA launched an ad campaign featuring a shark eating a man underwater surrounded by blood, with the tagline, "Payback is hell, go vegan." PETA's campaign manager defended the ad, saying, "With the recent shark attack in the news, we thought that it was a good time to bring this discussion up that will hopefully save lives, both human and animals." CJ's mother, understandably, was not impressed. She told Fox News the activists were over the top, adding that if they didn't want to eat meat or fish, that was their choice. Then she probably grilled a steak, just to prove a point. For CJ, the experience didn't turn him against sharks. He told reporters afterwards that he still respects the animal and he eventually went back in the water. CJ's story is one of sheer luck, quick thinking, and friendship under pressure. But what happens when the shark doesn't just bite, but goes for your head? Before we dive deeper into more terrifying shark-infested waters, first, here's a quick tip. Here at How to Survive, being prepared is just half the battle. The other half is putting what you've learned into action. Let's say you and your crew end up stranded on a deserted island far from civilization. We're talking no internet, no cell service, and sadly no access to How to Survive. Just you, Mother Nature, and maybe a shark or two. That's where the book comes in. This right here is the ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization. It's not your typical survival manual. It's a 400-page hand-illustrated art piece that doubles as a blueprint for restarting the world. Inside, you'll find a collection of humanity's most critical inventions, from basic surgery to building a simple engine. It'll even teach you how to make gunpowder. You know, for when you're sick of losing all your fish to hungry sharks. Scan our QR code to grab your copy of the ultimate guide to rebuilding civilization, and use our promo code HowToSurvive for 10% off. And remember, it's not the strongest who survive, but those who are most adaptable. And this book will help you adapt to any situation. Now, back to the show. January 23rd, 2007, off the southern coast of New South Wales, Australia, 41-year-old Eric Nearus and his son Mark were diving for abalone shellfish in the chilly waters off Cape Howe. Visibility underwater was poor that day, something Eric knew was a risk. With his son manning the boat, Eric strapped on his gear and entered the murky waters. Everything was going to plan, until the unexpected happened.
1 second it was daylight, the next second everything went black.
That's how Eric described the moment he was ambushed by a great white shark. He didn't see it coming, quite literally. That's because, in an instant, his entire head and shoulders were in the great white's mouth, and his arm was down its throat.
The head in a seal is the working end of a critter, and sharks know that much. If they can bite off the head, the rest of it's an easy meal.
Everything went black. I started to get shaken horizontally. I was getting eaten alive.
When a shark head shakes, what it's doing is dragging its teeth, especially its upper teeth, through the prey from side to side like this, and sawing through the prey.
As he was thrashed back and forth underwater, Eric did the unthinkable. Some reports say he grabbed his abalone chisel and stabbed the shark in the eye. Others, including Eric himself, say he gouged it with his bare fingers. Either way, it worked. The shark let go, but only for a moment. It came back and bit him again, this time clamping down on his torso. Miraculously, his lead-weight vest absorbed most of the damage, possibly saving his life. Eric made it back to the surface where his son, who had been waiting on the boat, pulled him aboard. He was rushed to hospital with massive injuries after being bitten twice by a great white shark, but luckily survived. His story went viral, not just for the horror, but for the absurdity of surviving a headfirst bite. Most people don't. Eric Nearus faced death and somehow made it out alive, but not every survivor walks away whole. A family fishing trip turned into a bloody nightmare and left a young man fighting for his life. Craig Hutto was 16 years old, a high school athlete from Tennessee. In June 2005, Craig and his family headed down to Cape San Blas, Florida for a break. Just a little fishing, a little swimming, a bit of sun in the Gulf of Mexico. It was supposed to be the perfect vacation. Instead, it became the worst day of their lives. The area was calm and peaceful, with just a few families, like the Huttos, soaking up the sun and enjoying the white sand beaches. With not much else going on, Craig and his brother Brian figured it was the perfect time to go fishing.
The water was probably about a couple inches above my belly button, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it feels like a punch on my left thigh. Water's murky, don't know what it is.
It was a bull shark, between 6 to 8 feet long. Craig didn't even see it coming.
Something grabbed me on my right leg. Immediately, I went straight into shock. I vividly remember that the only thing that I was thinking was, Craig, this is a dream, you have to wake up right now.
The shark pulled him under, its jaws tearing through muscle and bone. In a desperate attempt to break free, Craig tried to pry open the shark's mouth with both hands, but that only made things worse. Craig's older brother, Brian, turned just in time. Without thinking twice, Brian dove into the water. He punched the shark in the gills until it let go, then dragged his brother to shore. This was smart thinking on Brian's part. Areas like the nose and the gills are sensitive to sharks. So if you're ever in a situation like this, try and hit these spots with all your might. Meanwhile, Craig was bleeding heavily from his legs and hands. Thankfully, 3 nurses happened to be on the beach that day. They jumped into action, slowing the bleeding and keeping Craig stabilized until a helicopter arrived. He was airlifted to the hospital, alive, but forever changed. The damage to his leg was too extensive. Doctors had no choice but to amputate. The scars on his hands still remain. So do the flashbacks. And what made it even more terrifying? Just 2 days earlier, 14-year-old Jamie Daigle had been killed by a bull shark in the exact same area. Florida's beaches were in a full-blown panic. Craig Hutto's story is one of quick thinking and heroic rescue. But what if you realize the only person who could keep you alive is you? That's the situation this passionate freediver found herself in. Far from shore, injured, and bleeding in shark territory. Annika Craney was no stranger to swimming with sharks. But on this particular day, something felt off. The visibility was terrible. She was near Fitzroy Island, off the coast of Queensland, Australia, taking a break from filming a YouTube series aboard the Barefoot, a sailing catamaran where she worked as a deckhand and videographer. The plan was just a casual swim with a new crew member, nothing out of the ordinary. But Annika, despite her experience, felt uneasy that day. She told her friend who went into the water with her that she wasn't comfortable and decided to head back to the boat. That's when she saw it. Just a shadow at first, near the sandy floor. She turned and locked eyes with it.
I looked the shark in the eye and I saw that it was looking straight at me.
Sharks are apex predators, guided by instincts honed over millions of years. In murky water, where visibility is poor, they often use sudden bursts of speed to strike their prey before it's fully aware. And that's exactly what happened next.
It hit me so fast. I didn't even quite realize what had happened. I felt this pressure on my left leg. And honestly, I thought that it had just hit me with its head. And so my instinctual reaction was to kick it off.
Her instinct kicked in. She tried to kick it away with her fins. But then, there was blood.
It wasn't until I saw the blood pooling around me that I actually realized it had bitten me.
The shark had severed an artery in the lower part of her left leg. She was bleeding fast, and she knew more sharks could come.
I grabbed my leg and I started screaming for help. Not just because I was losing what seemed like a lot of blood, but I also realized the shark might come back and bite me again. And if it did, I might not survive this.
In that moment of pure fear, everything went white and foggy. She couldn't hear, could barely think. She realized this was life or death.
If I wanted to survive this, I had to give it everything I had to get out of the water.
Somehow, through sheer will and with the help of her friend, she made it to the shore. And miraculously, she survived. After extensive recovery, surgeries, and time to heal, Annika made a decision most people wouldn't understand.
I actually chose to swim with sharks, and I'm glad that I did. It was a really wonderful way to make peace with this experience.
But what if the fear wasn't just personal? What if it consumed an entire nation? Because over 100 years ago, a string of shark attacks along the Jersey Shore sparked a panic so intense, it would change how the world saw sharks forever. This is the real story that inspired the movie Jaws. It all started on July 1st, 1916, in a quiet little beach town called Beach Haven, New Jersey. A guy named Charles Van Sant, in his early 20s, decided to go for a quick swim before dinner. Everything seemed normal until people on shore heard him screaming. The lifeguards sprang into action, but it was too late. Charles was pulled from the water, his leg shredded. He suffered severe blood loss from the gaping wound on his left thigh. He didn't make it. Doctors thought maybe it was a boat propeller, because back then, the idea of a shark attacking a human wasn't a thing people took seriously. 5 days later, just 45 miles north in Spring Lake, Charles Bruder, a bell captain at a local hotel, was swimming during his lunch break when he was attacked. He lost both legs. A lifeguard and bystander pulled him onto a lifeboat, but he died before they reached the shore. Still, experts didn't believe it. Sharks? Attacking people? That was considered absurd. Some newspapers suggested it might have been a giant sea turtle. A sea turtle? Really? Then came July 12th, the day everything changed. 12-year-old Lester Stillwell was cooling off with friends in Matawan Creek, an inland tidal river nearly 11 miles from the ocean. Suddenly, he vanished beneath the water. Locals thought it was a seizure, until they saw the blood. A group of men, including 24-year-old Watson Stanley Fisher, dove in to search for Lester. That's when the shark struck again. Fisher was bitten in the thigh. He was carried to a nearby home, but died hours later. Just 30 minutes after, another attack. 14-year-old Joseph Dunn was swimming nearby when the shark bit into his leg. He survived. 5 attacks, 4 deaths in just 12 days. The media exploded. Panic spread like wildfire. The attacks shook the public and the scientific community. Until then, many believed sharks were harmless to humans. The series of attacks changed that forever. The impact of these tragic events went far beyond New Jersey. This was the moment that turned sharks into monsters in the public imagination. And decades later, it would inspire Peter Benchley's novel Jaws and later Steven Spielberg's blockbuster film. And with it, a legacy of fear that would haunt sharks for generations. But that fear had real-world consequences. After Jaws hit theaters, shark trophy hunting surged. Even Spielberg later expressed his regret over how the film contributed to the vilification of sharks. Today, many shark species are endangered or threatened. Overfishing and habitat loss have both taken their toll. And that matters more than most people realize because sharks help keep our oceans in balance. Lose them, and whole ecosystems suffer. So yes, sharks can be terrifying, but they're also misunderstood. And they need protection just as much as respect. These stories are a chilling reminder that while shark attacks are very rare, they do happen. The people in these stories were changed forever, some physically, all emotionally. But we've learned a lot from what they went through. So if you ever find yourself out in the ocean, keep this in mind. Don't swim at dawn or dusk. That's when sharks like to feed. Stick with a group, or at least use a buddy system. Sharks are way less likely to approach a crowd. Leave the shiny jewelry at home. To a shark, that sparkle can look like fish scales. Maybe skip the all-black wetsuit too. You don't want to look like a seal. And if you do spot a shark, try not to panic. Keep your eyes on it and swim away slowly. Staying calm is key. As I mentioned before, if a shark grabs you, aim for its eyes, gills, or snout. Use whatever you've got. A GoPro, your fists, even a snorkel. This was something that saved Australian surfer Mick Fanning's life, all while being broadcast on live TV. We'll uncover his story and more on another jaw-dropping episode of How to Survive.